Hey, I'm back with the episode 2 of the Power Apps with Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations Connectivity. Today's agenda is I'm going to start with CRUD operations. I would be covering control validations, how to perform various kinds of control validations on Power Apps. I would also be covering AI prompts, how to create AI prompts from Power Apps. And of course, as you can understand, nothing is possible at all in Power Apps if you are not leveraging Power Automate. So I would be covering all these things. And but before I begin, I would like to know if you have already seen the episode 1 of the series. And just in case if you have not seen it already, requesting you to please have a look at the same. I have given the link in the description. And also, if you have not already subscribed to my channel, I would like to request you to subscribe the same and share with your friends who would also like to learn Power Apps from Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations perspective. So, without wasting any more time, let me jump into the demo. Okie dokie. So, if you remember the last episode, what we did was that we introduced a drop down out here called legal entity, and we were changing the customer groups based on whatever selection you have made on the legal entity. So, say for example, in my customer group is based out of a legal entity called, I'm going to select here USMF, and let me see, like basically I'm waiting this call to be over. You can see like basically it's calling that Power Automate, and the Power Automate is like it's filling up the customer group. And if I make a drop down out here, it will tell me that these are the different customer groups that are available for this legal entity. So if I select here as 100, our next task would be to create a customer based on the inputs. Like say for example, I'm going to give a customer code like this. I'm going to give a customer name. I'm giving the currency I've already selected, and I should be able to do a submit, and it should be able to create. Why this is disabled? Because I have given some validation that unless this customer code, the customer name, these values are not given, it should be disabled. How this is done? Let me show you how. That is very simple. What I can do is that I can click on the submit button, and if I go all the way down to display mode, I would see like I've written these three conditions, like if any of txt cust code dot text if it is blank, or if txt cust group if it is blank. So txt cust group, as this is a drop down, as it is as it is a combo box, so that's why we have to write like this: txt cust group dot selected dot value if it is blank, that is if I have not selected anything in my cust group combo box, or if the customer name is equal to blank, then my submit button is should stay as disabled, or if they are not blank, then they should be made as editable, allow edit equal to true. So you see, like this is how you can manipulate the editability, the inability, or the accessibility of any button by writing any of these controls like this. As many controls you want to do a validations, like unless all these controls are populated, unless the user fills up the values of these controls, this button I should want to keep it as disabled. So that is one thing. Here now I am adding a control over here called LBL customer creation result, which is basically going to contain the result of my execution. So the moment I'm clicking on submit, it should fetch the status of the execution, if the customer has been created successfully or there was some error that was encountered. So I'm saying if status is equal to created, then the label should be shown as customer creation successful, and if not, it will be shown as customer creation failed. So what is this status? Okay, to answer that, let me show you one more thing. Like if I go to on there is one more method over here called visible. So if I click on visible, I'll be able to see like if status is equal to false, then, or I mean if it is the status is equal to blank, then it should be false. The visible, it should be visible as false. And if the status is not blank, then the then the control should be shown up. So what is the status is basically a string that gets populated once I'm clicking on the submit button. But why I'm declaring this variable, why and how am I declaring this variable? So as we discussed in the previous exercise in my previous episode, like in Power Automate or in Power Apps, you don't need to declare any variable explicitly like we do in C Sharp or in Java or in X++. We don't need to declare any variable. It's implied. So the moment I'm saying that status is equal to, so if I showing you where I have written this, if I click on submit and I'm going all the way to my on select. So it say I'm saying status is equal to PowerApps v2 post to customer v3 dot run. What is this PowerApps v2 post to customer v3? I will show you soon. So basically, it is doing what? It is passing on the contents of the customer code. It is passing on the contents of the data ID, then customer name, and then the customer group, and finally the currency. So all these things, when I'm passing this on as the variables of this method called run, then it is returning something known as the status. And this status I am basically assigning it in this variable called status. So this status, this when I say this, set status in bracket and then the content of the status, it is understanding depending on what I am returning from this post to customer v3. It is understanding it's a string type variable and it is adjusting its the data type accordingly. So it's an awesome feat from Power Apps. Like as opposed to the conventional programming languages, you don't need to declare the data type explicitly. So what is this Power Apps v2 post to customer v3? As you have rightly guessed, this is nothing but a flow. So let me take you to the flow where I have defined this. So if I go to Power Automate, it will show me the list of all the Power Automate or list of all the flows that are part of my this Canvas app. So last week we saw, on the last episode, we saw the lookup cross company customer group. This we defined to populate the customer groups based on the legal entity selection. Today I'll show you like what is this Power Apps v2 post to customer v3. It's a method which is a very simple method. I will show you. It's a flow, and in this flow, what I'm doing is that let this get loaded in the meanwhile. And yeah, it got loaded. So this is how the flow looks like. So as you can guess, in the first step I'm getting the controls values like cust account, data area ID, cust name, cust group, the currency of the customer that I want to create. And so the controls are a bit haphazard, but don't worry about that. You can define your controls as you want. So in the next step, what I'm doing is that I am getting a token, which you can understand, which I can get from login.microsoftonline.com slash then the tenant ID, which we have already created in our Microsoft Intra ID. And I am also creating a client ID, which is a part of the Intra ID. And client secret I also have generated from the Microsoft Intra ID. And lastly, I am setting the resource is equal to the base URL of my Dynamics financial operations. So once we have done that, we would get the AAD token value, which I am parsing in the next step by creating a small variable called AAD token, which is nothing but it's a standard drill of any kind of Dynamics 365 financial operation call or data entity call. So I'm basically getting the value of the access token like this, and then I'm creating a status called a variable called status, which is a string type variable. This I am eventually going to return back to my caller Power Apps. So what I'm doing is that here I'm calling the post customer v3, which is nothing but a customer v3 OData entity endpoint. And in my authorization, I'm passing on the bearer token like this. You know about this. You have done this so many times while calling the OData entity endpoint. And then I am just passing a payload which looks like simply invoice account, then cust account, data ID, and customer group, customer account, which is nothing but the invoice account. Once again, party tab is equal to organization. I'm hard coding this, but you can definitely change this to person if you want. And organization name, which is nothing but the name of the customer which you are providing from the Power Apps, and lastly the currency code, which is also you are passing from the Power Apps. So when you have done that, it is going to validate the Dynamics 365 financial operation is going to do a lot of validations, and if this validation comes as correct, if it works correctly, it will, I'm basically capturing the status of my execution. If it is everything goes fine, I'm collecting the status of the execution as created, and if it fails, um, it will error out right out here. And what I'm doing is that I'm responding to a Power Apps flow by sending out the status of my execution. So the status of the execution is created or failed. Additionally, what I can do is that I can call this conditionally by setting going to the settings and saying that in obviously this you cannot do from here. This for this you need to go to the Power Automate design, and you can change it from here, which you can do by. So I'm saying if the status code is equal to 200 or 202, so 200 means it's created equal to OK, and 202 means it's accepted. So if the status code comes as any of this, then the variable should be set as created. And if the status code if is equal to none of this, then the status code it should become the status should become as failed. And finally, I am sending the value of this variable of the status whatever I'm obtaining from the previous step, and I'm setting it back to my caller Power Apps. Okay, so summing up everything, the status is what I am getting from the flow, and I am assigning that as a local variable called status, local variable to my Power Apps, which Power Apps is understanding like it's a string type variable. The same thing I'm using in my labels visible check on my visible method. Like if the status is not blank, then only make it visible, else keep it invisible. If you have seen this, you have noticed this, like you'd see like in my reset method also I'm doing the same drill. Like basically I'm setting the status, set status is equal to blank. So I'm flashing out the contents of my status variable. Plus, I'm doing a couple of things here. Say, for example, I'm resetting the contents of my cust group. So you remember, my cust group is getting populated from a flow. So this txt cust group, this controls all the contents. I'm flashing it out. Also, what it is doing is it's very interesting. Like content. There is a variable called content. I'm setting it as true, and immediately after that, I'm setting it as false. Why is this done? So let me show you why. So if you go to customer code, here I have defined in my reset method, I have defined as it as a content. Just I'm saying content, nothing else. And also in the customer name, I'm doing the same thing. I'm saying reset equal to content. So content is essentially a Boolean variable. And what I'm doing is that if I say reset on my reset, I'm saying content equal to true and then content equal to false. It does what? Thereby I am clearing off, I'm flashing out whatever contents are there in these controls, like customer code or customer name. I'm just flashing out all the contents of these controls. What is the utility of doing it like this? I could have simply said like set is equal to txt customer code dot txt equal to blank. I could have written like that also. Why I'm saying like that? That set content true, then set content false. The reason is, so imagine a situation where you have at least 20 or 30 controls like this. Do you believe like you have to keep on writing for each and every one of these controls like txt so and so field? dot text equal to blank, text so and so field dot text equal to blank. Like that, if you keep on writing, it doesn't make any sense. So instead of that, why don't you write a shortcut way, like you just define a variable called content, and then in the reset button you are just setting it as true and then setting it as false. It will flush off the contents of these controls immediately. So that's a shortcut way of doing this. And let me now run our Power App. I have filled up a customer code like this. I've given a name. I've also selected the customer group, and this currency I have selected. So if I click on submit, let us wait and see what happens. So it is contacting the flow. Flow is basically submitting the controls, and it is posting it back to Dynamics 365. And let us see what it happens. The customer creation was successful. It went as a success. So if I just reload my customer and let us see what has happened. So if I quickly filter with a name like, so let us see what happens. It has created with all the details that I provided. And if I come back here and let me reset it quickly and see what happens. So you see whatever was selected or given, it basically got vanished. Us to the next topic. What are prompts? What are Power Automate and Power Apps prompts? So prompts, you can create a prompt to execute any action by manually describing what you want to do. Define your variables as an input to the prompt to make it understand and take out any activity you want to create. And create the prompt and run it from flow to pass on any natural language input you receive from the user. Mark my words, it is one of the most exciting part of today's presentation, as we would show you, like, you don't need any kind of extra coding or anything, settings or anything special that you want to do. Just you need to tell the prompt that, hey, I want you to do this. It will understand and it will do the needful. Let me show you how. On the left hand side of your make.powerapps.com, once you have logged on to your environment, proper environment, which you can always do from here, and you can choose the from your AI prompts. You can see the AI prompts from here. If you are not able to see the AI prompts, then additionally what you can do is that you can click on this more and you can discover all. From the discover all, like what I have done is that I have clicked on and find from out here, like, prompts. I can see like this. So you see AI prompts, I've pinned it already, so that's why it is saying it you want to unpin it. So I'm not doing anything. So if you have already pinned it up, it will start showing itself on your left hand side of the panel. So I'm clicking on AI prompts, and you'd see I have created already a lot of prompts, as you can see, depending on what I wanted to do. So let me create a prompt quickly for you. So if I say a prompt like this, can you get the gist of user input like this? So when I say this and I press a slash, and when I say the slash, it allows me to declare a variable like this. I am declaring a variable and I am giving a name of this variable, say for example this user input, and I'm then defining a sample data which I have already collected for you. For example, I have taken a long paragraph from Wikipedia which describes the city of Chicago, its history, its population, and various details. So what I will do is that I will just copy this and let me quickly paste this back in my prompt. And I'm just clicking on add input. So if I click on test prompt, you would see like it is getting the gist of whatever I've given and giving it in a very few sentences of whatever it has understood from my input. So you see, I am not doing anything extra, anything fancy, any high-end coding or high-end anything, you know, uh, rocket science. It is understanding by the help of GPT-4o, which is you can find out by clicking on settings, and you can find out from standard GPT-4o mini default, or you can select advanced GPT-4o. So if you do this, and you can also adjust the temperature, which means to predictable results, while higher temperature would allow you more diversify your or creative responses, and record retrieval. All these settings you can set up, and you can save this. So I'm not saving anything because I'm not going to use this in anywhere. I just did it to give you a feel of how you can create your own prompt. So I'm canceling and coming out. So if I take you all the way down to something called validate address prompt, if I click on this, you would see I have written like, is this a valid address for the given postal code country city combination? And I've defined the input out here as address. And I'm saying use precise location for address, pin code, locality, and country combination. Answer in yes or no. I've just given dummy input like this, which is an address which actually does not exist. And I'm saying, say for example, if I give a pin like this, and I'm clicking on test prompt, so let us see what happens. Like, it should be able to answer in yes or no. It's saying yeah, it's a valid address. And if I say it as something which is never ever possible, say for example, I'm giving an address like something like this, and if I'm testing on prompt, it should be able to say as no, because no such postal code does exist in India. So I'm just canceling and coming out. I'm going to use this validate address prompt in my PowerApps, which I will show you how. And also let me show you one more prompt which I have created called get address details. It is also doing what? It is extracting the value of street, postal code, city, and country from a given input called customer address as a JSON. And I'm also saying to remove all the single quotes and JSON keywords. Also remove any other part of the response other than the JSON response. Just keep the JSON response, remaining all else you remove. So how am I doing that? I'm clicking on this input, and I show you how, like, it is a dummy address which I'm giving like this. And if I click on test prompt, it's showing as, it has been able to extract the street, postal code, city, and country, and morphing them as a JSON response. So I'm also canceling this, and I will show you how to call this address prompts in your PowerApps, which will reduce a large amount of your manual development work. App whereby I'm making the user select the customer, and I'm allowing the user to provide the customer address. So here, this address is large field, which is a multi-line field, which you can see I have selected the mode as multi-line. And if I run this, what is it doing is that it should be able to select the address of the for the customer which I just created. Say for example, I'm creating this customer like this. Let it get loaded first. Right. So here I am just giving the customer which I created, and it's going to take a couple of moments to filter the customer. So I'm just selecting the customer from here, and let me wait for a moment. And I'm selecting this customer. So, and I'm giving any address like this, you see. I'm just giving an address, nowhere I'm mentioning like this is my city, this is my pin code, and this is my street, or this is my country. I'm not mentioning anything explicitly. I'm expecting my prompt to make all these things out, and I'm clicking on submit, and let us wait what happens. It's saying that's updated successfully. The address got updated successfully. So you would see something. So if I click on this, okay, this pop-up vanishes. And let me show you how I've done that. But before that, let me see how this customer actually got updated. So if I click on refresh, and let us open this customer and get inside and see how what is the effect of my update. So yeah, let me open this. It's taking a while to get it opened. And so if I open the record and if I go to the all the way down to my addresses, I should be able to see the address which I just updated this. So you see the customer address looks like this, and it has been able to split up my country, zip code, street, city, everything. It has been able to split up, and I've given a name like this. There's name or description like this hyphen. The customer code, and then I've given hyphen business. This is not the customer code. This is the by default I have kept it like this. Like it is the party ID hyphen the business, which you can definitely change. I will show you how I've done that, but you can certainly change to something more meaningful. And purpose I've given as business, but yes, of course, you can also change this. And I've given all the other things. I didn't need to do anything. Everything else is handled by my prompt. And let me show you how am I doing this. It right. Basically, I have used a Power Automate out here, which is called Customer Address Update. And if I click on this and click on Edit, it will show me the details of the flow which I have designed. Let it get loaded in the meanwhile. And I'm just doing the same drill as I am basically receiving the customer account and then the address which I'm getting from the user prompt. And then what I'm doing is that I'm calling the prompt which I have defined which I showed you in my previous step, which I am calling, and I'm passing on the address altogether. I'm sending it as an address altogether, which I'm basically doing a validation of the address. Let me find out first if the address is a correct address or not. And I'm calling this address prompt from here. If it is a success, if the text is yes, how is that I'm getting the text? Text is basically, that is, if you click on this and you go to the expression all the way down, you would see like here in my dynamic content, you would see like here I'm getting the text, which is from my create text GPT with a validate prompt validate address. Click on this, and if I'm saying that if the address is yes, if the text is yes, you remember like the text that we created for validation of the address was either yes or no. So if the address response comes as yes, then you show this as a correct address and you do the furtherances, or else you should stop here, which I'm responding back to my PowerApps as failed. So in my here I've defined a scope. Scope, you all know what's a scope. Scope is something like a scope of a method like we do for X++, or scope of a method we do for C#. It's doing exactly the same thing. So the inter block of my executions, I have kept it under one roof of a scope. So I'm again calling our GPT prompt, which is this, and this is basically the prompt which is required to split the address contents into a JSON. So I have already copied the parts of my JSON, which is, if you remember, like the JSON was very simple one, just to convert that into a street, city, postal code, and country. And then I am parsing the JSON. So I'm simply getting the response from my previous step, and I'm parsing the JSON, and then I'm doing the same mundane exercise of getting an AD token, and then I'm copying this, calling this location postal address cells tax group v2. I'm calling this for updating the address, but you can also call another OData entity endpoint known as the it's called party postal address, like that. You can call that OData entity as well. And I'm passing on the bearer token which I've got from the previous step, and then I'm passing on the party number. So this is very important. If you remember, like what I have done in my prompt, I'm purposely selecting the not passing the customer account, rather I'm passing the party number. Let me show you how in a while. So I'm also passing on the location ID, which I'm just giving as business, which I'm giving the party number hyphen business. I'm hard coding it, but you can certainly give it something meaningful. And Location rules I'm also giving as business. You can also change this as, apart from business, you can also keep it as residential, or anything you want to keep it. Is primary, is by default it should be yes. And description, once again I'm keeping it as, the party number hyphen business. And street, I'm getting this value of the street from my prompt. City, state, I'm keeping it as blank for now, but you can give the state value as well. Zip code, I'm also keeping it here. County, I'm leaving it as blank, but you can also pass it on. And finally, I'm country region as code, I'm giving as country. So if I give this, basically the OData entity, what it is going to do is that it's going to insert into the address, OData entity address of the party for which I'm doing the updation, and should be able to come back to me with the response of my execution. So if the response is 200 or 201, it should be able to come back saying updated successfully. Or if it fails, if it is of none of 200 or 201, it should say that update failed. So if I have structured the flow like this, let me take you back to my Power Apps. And if you, as I was saying, like, even though I have make the user select the customer account, but in the backend I am actually selecting the corresponding party account that is available with it. So how am I doing this? It's very simple. I have given a data source like this. See the customers. I've added a data source. So how did I add? As you, if you remember from our episode 1, we saw that basically we are adding the customer V3, and in the customer's V3 I am selecting the fields. If I click on edit, I'll be able to select the party ID as the primary text and the secondary text as the customer account. So these two I am basically showing on my drop down, and I am searching by the organization name, as because of which if you search with the name of the customer, it should be able to find you out the customer account. Next, what I'm doing is that on the submit button, I am just calling this customer address updates, which is nothing but this flow. So this is the flow which I'm calling dot run, and then I'm passing on the party ID and my street details as text, and then I'm waiting for the response that it should come back. So, and this response, as usual, I am setting it to my response variable called a variable I have defined as response. So net what it is doing is that it's very simple. It is just assigning the value of this execution in my response variable, and if it fails, it should be able to show me that either the address is not a correct address or the address updation has failed. Like that, it should be showing me. So how have I done that? This pop-up, as I was showing you. So if I come back to my in my tree view, I'd be able to see, like, I've created a container called container results. So this is a container. In the container, I can see, like, I've created a container called container results. Inside that, I've created a LBL results, a label, and a button called BTN OK. So these two controls are there inside my container. So what this container is doing is that if you click on this and you go to the visible, so if I go all the way down to my visible, I have to see, like, if response is not blank, then only it should be visible, else it should be invisible. So exactly, if you load the form for the first time, you won't be able to see anything because the response for the first time is always empty. The moment you load it up, you click on submit and some response comes, only then it becomes visible. And in the button OK, what I'm doing is that I'm setting the response as equal to null, as because of which the container vanishes when I'm clicking on button OK. So that's it. So when I'm clicking on submit, this is the sequence in which the whole thing flows and it updates the customer in the backend without letting me do anything extra to split out the country, city, zip or street from my postal address prompt and to insert in all these things into my customer. So if I go back to my prompt, I should be able to see, like, it's an awesome feat from ChatGPT. Like, using which you are simply being able to get a customer a JSON response, and this JSON response I am passing on along with my user's party code to insert into my customer's address. For today, episode 3, which is coming on 16th March, is going to focus on these topics. Say, for example, passing on optional parameters. How can we call a flow which has got some optional parameters? How to handle that? We'll also see like how can you parse JSON in PowerApps, JSON responses which are coming to PowerApps, some controls. How can you do that? We'll also see like how can you make one control be dependent on another, which is also a very important part of the PowerApps validation. And we'll also use clear collect. Clear collect is also a very important tool, or rather I'd say a framework keyword which we can use to do a lot of miraculous things. We would see that, and let me conclude the session for today, and have a great weekend and see you soon. And if you have not already subscribed to my channel, please do so. Thanks and much love. Subha.